Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived in a very, very big house, and she was the daughter of a very, very rich family, and she was the only daughter, but her mommy and daddy were very, very cruel and very, very mean. She lived in one of the biggest houses in the town, but she felt like she wanted to escape, and that's exactly what she tried to do. One night, when her mommy and daddy were asleep, she sneaked out from underneath the very heavy blankets, and she put on some warm clothes so she can go out in the night. Now, did I tell you that this story was about 200 years ago, when there was no electricity, and the girl had to find some candles and some matches so that she could find her way outside? Well, she found the candles and she found the matches. And as she walked down the big long hallway to the big round staircase, she almost dropped the matches and woke up her parents. "I don't want to wake up my parents," she said. "If they catch me, I'll never get out of this big house." You see, one of the reasons why she didn't like to stay there was because the house had 20 slaves and maids and cooks and cleaners, and the mommy and daddy were always shouting and hitting and making them do all the work. And the girl, who didn't do a day's work in her life, felt really sorry for these people, and she couldn't do anything about it. So she wanted to send a message, and she thought she'd run away. Standing at the top of the staircase looking down, she didn't know whether to go back to her room or to run. She took a deep breath, put the candles in her pocket, and tiptoed down the steps. She came to the big door, which was really hard to open, and she took her 20 minutes just to lift the latch. She lifted it off, opened the door, and stood outside in the dark, pitch-black night. It was very quiet, but when she lit the match and she put the candle on and put it in the lantern, she was able to see. And the light shone the path down all the way to the road. So she walked down there quite quickly because she didn't want to wake up her mum and dad. When she got to the bottom of the road, there was a path going to the right and to the left. But she didn't know where she was going, so she just went, this one. And she went left. And she followed the road all the way down to the forest. And there was 2 entrances to the forest, and she didn't know which one to take. So she went, this one. And she went right. And she went right into the deep, dark forest. And she was scared. She was scared because she didn't know what was in the forest, and she heard lots of stories of wolves and bears and gruffalos and all kinds of things. But you know what? She'd never seen a gruffalo or a bear or a wolf, but she'd seen her mummy and daddy hitting all these cleaners and workers, so she knew she was definitely scared of that. But she didn't know what she was scared of because she hadn't seen anything in the forest. She'd never been there before. So she started to walk into the deep, dark forest. And then she started to hear noises, and the noises grew louder and louder. And these noises were of owls and birds and the growls of what seemed to be bears. Now she started to get worried and scared, and she didn't know which way she was going, so she started to run faster and faster into the forest. And she got to the place where she thought she could see the moon through the top of the trees, and it was light. And she stopped, and her heart was racing and her blood was pumping, and she couldn't hear the noises anymore. And she sat down, and she was so tired because it was the middle of the night. She fell asleep. Well, the next day she woke up, and she was in the middle of the nice forest, and she didn't know what to do. So she kept walking in the same way she was going. She walked and she walked and she walked. And she walked for miles. She walked for miles and miles. Sometimes she stopped and she could pick the fruit from the trees. So she knew she was going to be alright. And she started to walk what seemed to be up this long hill. And then she got to the top of the hill and she could see the sea. She could see the ocean. And she could see a boat getting ready to sail. So she ran down there and she snuck onto the ship where nobody could see. And just as the ship was about to leave, the captain saw this little girl and said, "Hey, what are you doing on my ship?" She said, "I'm running away from my mummy and daddy." "Why are you doing that, you silly girl?" "Because they're hitting all the cleaners and stuff." "Oh, where's your mummy and daddy live?" So the captain stopped the ship, got off with this little girl, took all his soldiers and men and drove his horses to this girl's house. They got to the house and the captain knocked on the girl's door and the daddy came out, and the captain looked very angry, and he shouted at his mummy and daddy. He said, "Hey, you stop treating these workers like that, because your daughter almost got onto my ship and sailed away, and we were going to the other side of the world and you would never see your daughter again. So what do you want to do? Do you want to keep hitting these people, or do you want to live with your daughter?" Well, suddenly in 1 second the daddy and mummy realised what they'd been doing, and they promised the captain of the ship, who was a very scary looking big guy, that they would never do it again. And so the captain gave the little girl a hug and said, "Don't worry, go on." And the little girl ran and gave her daddy and mummy a big hug. And they went back into the house, and from that day on, the rich parents did not treat these cleaners badly at all. In fact, they all became part of the family and treated them really nicely. And the girl grew up to have a big house of her own and have lots and lots of cleaners and stuff, and she treated them all very, very nicely. Because that day when she ran away, she learned two things. One of them was that it's silly to run away from something that you're scared of, because you can tackle it yourself. And two, sometimes you need somebody like a sailor to come and help you, to tell people what's right and what's wrong, and that some people do change, and that you can really live happily ever after. The end.